Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, March the 11th. And welcome to our commentary. Well, before I get to the topic of Iran, I wanted to direct you to a post that I have over at the American Thinker today. It's a post about what's happening in Virginia. If you're familiar with Virginia, Virginia just had an election last November. The Democrat won. She ran on the basis that she was a moderate. Hasn't really worked out that way. And the latest thing that they have done, and apparently it's going to be a fact, has to be approved, but it looks like it will be approved by the voters, is that they've redrawn the districts. They've gone from 6 to 5 Democrat to 10 to 1 Democrat. And I guess they're doing that based on the governor's election. Now, the governor's election, the lady who became governor did win, and she won by 10 points. But her margin of victory by no means justifies taking the redistricting from 6 to 5, 6-5 to 10-1. I mean, that is clearly an overreach on the part of the Democrats. They're going to get away with it because that's just the way it is. I mean, redistricting and whatever they call it, gerrymandering or whatever the word is, all of that, of course, is in the hands of the state legislature. And, the federal courts are not going to intervene. So if it goes to the state courts are going to approve it or support it. So, Virginia will have a 10-1 makeup in their congressional delegation. So that's a pickup of 4 for the Democrats. They've gone from 6-5 to 10-1. And there's 2 lessons here that I think Republicans need to learn. Lesson number 1 is this is the game. This is the game. This is the game you play. You maximize your majority to get the best redistricting maps or whatever that you can get. That's just the way the game is played. And the second lesson for the Republicans is you better play the game too. And you've got, some Republicans in Ohio who didn't think this is a nice thing to do, or Utah or whatever. Everybody's got to get in the game and realize that this is the way the game is played. And the Democrats use their majorities to win. And we got to do the same thing. They're both legal. They're both within the boundaries. So, again, moral of the story is you got to play to win. And, if somebody doesn't like it, well, that's their problem. But if you have a majority at the state legislature, redraw the maps and make them as favorable as you can to whoever the majority is. And then the next time, I'm sure when there's another majority, they'll do the same thing. It would be nice if we could find a perfect system to create perfectly drawn districts, but that's just not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. That's not the way politics works out. So, what we're seeing in Virginia is a lesson for everybody that, hey, you got to take advantage of your majorities and you got to come up with whatever districts you can come up with. They're doing that in Florida where they're going to redraw the map. And that should help the Republicans quite a bit down there. So, we'll see where this goes. But you got to play to win. To me, that's the memo here. You got to play to win, just like the Virginia Democrats are playing to win. That's just the way it goes. So, check out my post over at the American Thinker. Iran. That's the big topic. Iran. I get a chuckle out of people who are already concluding how this operation is going to end up. They're already saying we lost. It's been a failure. Based on what? I don't know. There's no tangible evidence that this has failed. In fact, if you look at the military operation, it's gone rather well. And I think that, this is where sometimes we let our politics, in a sense, get a hold of us. We don't know who's going to win or succeed here. It could turn out to be a failure, yes. And if it turns out to be a failure, meaning, we have to basically cut and run because we're not going to get anywhere in Iran, well, yeah, that's going to be a failure for President Trump, and that will cost him politically. There's another side to the story, and that is it could turn out to be a success, which I believe it will be. I believe it will be. I think that one of the things that we are doing in Iran is that we're eliminating their military operations. And that's what this is all about. I'm not really interested in a regime change in Iran or in putting this government or that government. That's not really what I want. What I want is to destroy the Iranian capability of their military capability of firing missiles and supporting terrorist organizations and so on. So if you can basically reduce Iran to a normal country that uses its resources to make itself a more prosperous country. And Iran has a great history. They're great people. They have great education. So if you have a government focused on Iran and not on supporting terrorism or blowing up Israel, it could be a great success story. Iran it could be a wonderful success story. But I mean, that's up for the Iranian people. We shouldn't be telling them what kind of government to have. But we have every right to destroy their military capability, because that military capability has been attacking the United States for quite some time. You've got the Marines in Beirut. You have, all of the other terrorist attacks that have happened over the last 40, 50 years. I'm sure you've all have read about them. Remember those embassy attacks in Africa a few years ago, and so on. So the USS Cole, what are they called, Houthis or whatever they're called in the Middle East, attacking commercial ships. So Iran has been in the background of all of that. They're the ones who've been cutting the checks for all of those organizations and attacks to succeed. And then, of course, you have the situation with those bombs, IED bombs, that killed our soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. That was a pretty costly activity. In fact, I've heard that a third of our fatalities in Iraq and Afghanistan happened because of those bombs. So all I can tell you is that I think we have every right to destroy their military capability and then let them figure out what they want to do with their country. I'm optimistic about their country because Iran has a great people. I mean, I'm sure all of you have known Iranians. There are many Iranian Americans here in the United States. They're well-educated people, good people, who I think would do a great job managing their country. But it's up to them. That's not up to us. So I think eventually, at some point, the military operation will cease, and then we will pull back and watch Iran basically take control of its country. And I'm pretty optimistic. I think they're going to do quite well because it's a great country with a great culture, and I'm sure they're going to do a great job. So that's how I see it. I think all these people who are saying this is going to be a failure, I don't think they really know what they're saying. I think they're just people who hate Trump and who oppose anything that Trump does. And because of that, they're going to say that everything that Trump does is a failure. Actually, this one is not a failure. And this one may turn out to be an incredible success story. I mean, if we can eliminate Iran as a sponsor of terror, that's a big success story. And that's a big plus, not just for the United States, for the region, for our allies, for everybody. Iran has been a headache for a long time. And that's hopefully what will be accomplished here, the elimination of that problem. I've got a post coming out tomorrow about more companies leaving what we like to call blue states, California, New Jersey, moving to Texas, moving to Georgia in another case. And, when you read about these companies and you ask them why they move, well, it's the same story. The business climate, excessive regulations, too many lawsuits, an environment, frankly, that doesn't allow you to make money and prosper. And if you're a company, you pay taxes, of course, but you also want to be in an environment, a business-friendly environment, like Texas, for example, where you can have a company and succeed. And yes, you got to pay taxes like everybody else, but we got to let you make a profit too. And if you look at the taxes in California, for example, you've got state corporate tax, a state income tax. You don't have that in Texas. And, eventually that shows up when you see these companies leaving, whether it's New Jersey in this case or California in another case. And in the article that I have coming out tomorrow, there's a whole list of these companies that have decided to leave the blue states and move to the red states. And again, The common denominator is they want to go somewhere where it's easier to do business. Okay, where it's easier to do business, where the government is actually on your side, not taxing you to death or regulating you to death, as happens to be the case in California. Well, it was 22 years ago today, March 11th, 2004, that they had that big terrorist attack in Spain. If you remember that, where they blew up some trains in Madrid and something like 200 people were killed. And that turned out to be a big event, of course, in Spain. And it also turned out to be a big event with respect to the Iraq War, because Spain decided to take its troops out of Iraq in protest for this attack. The problem is that the terrorists never left Spain. So the Spanish troops came home, but the terrorists didn't leave Spain. And that was a very bad move by the Spanish government back in 2004. And I don't think Spain has quite recovered from that. And if you look at what's happening now, where Spain doesn't want to let the United States use those bases or air bases in Spain territory or Spanish territory, frankly, it may be time to tell the Spaniards to get out of NATO, or to call somebody else when the Soviet tanks or the Russian tanks show up at their border. Because I think they're being very ungrateful to the United States for protecting Spain for a very long time. They don't even pay their share of NATO, from what I understand. So, maybe it's time to cut ties, if you will, with Spain, and let them protect themselves against these threats that, frankly, they have not done a very good job of protecting themselves in the past. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.